In that moment, when I reached into her car's glove box and my fingers brushed against the cold, unfamiliar necklace, I felt the world shatter in slow motion. The glint of metal caught the light just so, and engraved on its delicate chain were the initials LM, a truth I never anticipated. My heart pounded with a cocktail of shock and betrayal as I stared at the object, realizing that the secret it carried was not mine to share. I had trusted her implicitly, believed every word she spoke about our life together, yet this small piece of jewelry whispered of hidden stories and shattered promises that would forever change everything. It had been a typical Thursday afternoon when I borrowed her car to run a few errands, a routine I'd grown accustomed to without a second thought. I always admired how meticulously she kept her things, how every item in her car had its own place. But that day, while rummaging for the manual in the glove box, my hand brushed against something tucked away behind a stack of old receipts. Curious, I pulled it out. It was a necklace, resting in a small, unassuming jewelry box. I opened the lid slowly, as if expecting a miracle, and there it was, a silver pendant with elegantly engraved initials that were not mine. My mind raced as I tried to piece together what this could mean. Had she forgotten it there? Why would she hide something so personal in plain sight? I sat in the driver's seat, the hum of the engine a distant backdrop to the thunderstorm of thoughts in my head. Every memory of our shared moments, the laughter, the gentle touches, the whispered dreams, now felt tainted by the possibility that there was another chapter of her life I'd never known about. I questioned the authenticity of the life we'd built together, the trust I'd placed in her with every beat of my heart. I remember the first time I noticed subtle signs that maybe, just maybe, something was amiss. It wasn't overt, it was as if she had mastered the art of compartmentalizing her secrets. There were evenings when she would come home late with a vague explanation, her eyes clouded with an emotion she tried hard to hide. I brushed off those moments as stress from work, a product of a demanding job in a competitive world. But now, confronted by the tangible evidence of that necklace, every small omission and every unspoken word took on a more sinister significance. I felt as though I had been living in a carefully curated illusion, one where the truth had been tucked away in the corners, waiting for the right moment to emerge. With the necklace cradled in my hand, I drove home in a daze, each red light and idle minute amplifying the intensity of my inner turmoil. The familiar streets I had always navigated with ease now seemed alien, each passing billboard and shop window reflecting back the fractured image of the life I thought I knew. I couldn't shake the gnawing sensation that I was on the verge of an irrevocable revelation, a discovery that would force me to confront the possibility that the woman I loved had been living a double life. At home, I sat at my kitchen table, the necklace spread out before me like an altar to secrets and regrets. I turned it over repeatedly, tracing the finely engraved letters with my fingertip. My mind drifted back to our early days, when we were so raw and unguarded, sharing dreams and fears without reservation. Back then, I believed nothing could ever come between us. But the passage of time, it seems, had woven layers of silence and concealment into our relationship. I felt an overwhelming mix of anger, sorrow, and a creeping sense of self-doubt. Had I been so blinded by love that I refused to see the truth? Had her gentle reassurances been nothing more than a facade masking a world of hidden indiscretions? I decided I needed to know more, to find out the story behind this mysterious necklace. I recalled the last time I saw her wearing any jewelry, a casual dinner at a restaurant with our close friends, where she had worn a pair of delicate earrings, but never that necklace. It was never a piece she mentioned, never something she showed off with pride. That omission now loomed large in my mind. I began to piece together the timeline in my head. When was the necklace likely acquired? Had it been with her long before we met, or was it a recent addition, something that had come into her possession during our time together? Each question only deepened the mystery, and with each passing thought, my sense of betrayal grew. Unable to contain my curiosity, and my growing need for answers, I resolved to wait for her return that evening. I locked the necklace away in a small box and placed it on the dining table, as if it were an offering demanding explanation. I sat in the living room, the silence around me deafening, and rehearsed the conversation that would soon unfold. My heart was a tangled mess of emotions, and I could feel tears welling up even as I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. I had loved her with everything I had, and the mere thought that she might have shared a part of her life with someone else, as symbolized by the initials on that necklace, was a bitter pill to swallow. As dusk fell, I heard the familiar sound of keys turning in the lock, and my pulse quickened. I braced myself for the moment when I'd have to look her in the eyes and ask the questions that had been tormenting me all day. Would she confess? Would she be angry, defensive, or simply broken by the weight of my inquiry? I didn't know, and the uncertainty was almost as painful as the truth I was dreading. The moment she stepped through the door, a calm facade over her features, I forced a smile and greeted her. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "how was your day?" But inside, every word she spoke felt like a betrayal all over again. I led her to the kitchen where the necklace lay hidden in plain sight, and my heart pounded as I waited for her reaction. Every second stretched out into an eternity as I prepared to confront her with the secret that could shatter our world. That evening, as the shadows lengthened and the quiet hum of our home gave way to uneasy silence, I finally confronted her. I had spent the afternoon wrestling with the weight of that necklace and its unfamiliar initials. Every minute had been an agonizing debate within my heart. Could I dare to ask her the questions that had begun to claw at my trust? Now, with the box containing the necklace still on the dining table, I knew there was no turning back. I sat in the living room, trying to steady my breath and collect the scattered pieces of my thoughts. The house, usually a haven of shared routines and gentle laughter, felt strangely empty, as if it too sensed that something was irrevocably amiss. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for her return, each creak of the floorboards amplifying my internal cacophony of doubts and fears. My mind replayed every little detail from the day, the subtle hesitations in her voice when she answered my texts, the way her eyes seemed to avoid meeting mine during dinner, and now, the undeniable evidence of that necklace with the engraved initials LM. When I finally heard the sound of her key turning in the lock, my heart pounded like a relentless drum. I rose from my chair and moved toward the front door. She walked in quietly, placing her purse on the hall table as if nothing were different. But I could see it in the slight falter of her step and the way her eyes darted toward the living room, an unspoken plea for an explanation. "Hey," I said, forcing a calm into my voice that belied the storm raging inside me. "Can we talk?" She paused, her eyes meeting mine for just a heartbeat before quickly averting, as though searching for an escape. "Sure, Mark," she replied, her tone tentative. I gestured toward the kitchen table where the small box lay waiting. "I found something today." Her face drained of color when she saw the necklace, its glimmer stark under the soft lamplight. For a long, painful moment, neither of us spoke. I could see her struggle, the silent battle between the need to confess and the desire to protect herself. Finally, with a shaky exhale, she said, I didn't know you'd see that." I felt every word reverberate through me. "Then help me understand," I said, my voice firm yet laced with sorrow. "Whose is this, Sarah? What do these initials mean?" She sank into the chair across from me, her eyes fixed on the floor as if trying to erase the memory of what she was about to reveal. "It's complicated," she murmured, barely audible. "It's from my past, before we met." My stomach twisted with a mixture of disbelief and hurt. "Your past?" I repeated slowly. "You mean, before I became a part of your life?" She nodded, her hand trembling as it reached out to cover hers. "Yes, Mark. I have a past, a part of me that I tried so hard to leave behind. That necklace, it belonged to someone I once cared about very deeply." I leaned forward, searching her face for any sign that she wasn't telling the truth. "But why would you keep it?" I asked. "If it's just from before we met, why hide it in your car? Why not put it away where it belongs?" Her eyes flickered with a mix of shame and regret. "I thought I had moved on," she said softly. "But every now and then, something would bring back the memories. I kept it in the car because it reminded me of who I used to be, before I made some terrible choices." I swallowed hard, trying to process the words. "Terrible choices." I repeated, feeling as if I were walking on broken glass with every syllable. "Sarah, what are you saying?" She looked up then, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm saying that I wasn't completely honest with you about my life. There's a part of me that I've hidden away, my mistakes, my regrets, and I was terrified of losing you if you ever found out." Her voice trembled with the weight of years of silence. "I never intended to hurt you, Mark. I loved you, and I still do. But I couldn't just erase the past." Every word hit me like a blow. I'd always believed that what we shared was built on transparency and trust. Yet here was an admission that she'd been carrying the ghosts of her past with her, a past that she had carefully locked away in the recesses of her heart, only for it to resurface in the most unexpected way. "So you're telling me that before we were together, you were involved with someone?" My voice cracked with both disbelief and a raw, unfiltered hurt. She nodded slowly. "Yes. His name was Liam. We were young, and things were messy. I made mistakes I can't undo. I kept the necklace as a reminder of who I was, so I would never become that person again." She paused, searching my face for any sign of understanding, any spark of forgiveness. I know it sounds selfish, and I'm so sorry that I didn't trust you enough to tell you. But I was terrified, Mark. I feared that if you knew about Liam, if you knew about that time in my life, you'd think less of me. I thought I could compartmentalize, keep it all separate from what we were building together. I ran my hand through my hair, feeling the weight of her confession sink in. The room was filled with an oppressive silence as I struggled to reconcile the image of the woman I loved with the fragments of a past she had kept hidden. I remembered moments when she'd seemed distant, when a shadow had crossed her face for just a fleeting second as if burdened by memories she couldn't shake. Those moments, which I had once dismissed as the inevitable strain of life, now took on a much darker significance. Sarah, I said slowly, I don't know what to say. I feel betrayed, not because of Liam or the necklace, but because you never let me in. I feel like I never truly knew you. My voice was soft, yet every word carried the sting of raw pain. How could I love you so completely, only to discover that you had been hiding something so significant? Her eyes brimmed with tears as she reached out for my hand again. I'm sorry, Mark. I was so scared of not being enough, of not living up to the image I thought you deserved. I thought if I could hide this part of my past, then you'd only see the good, the person I wanted to be for you. I realize now that in doing so, I hurt you even more. I understand if you need time, if you want to walk away. I pulled my hand back, not out of anger but because I needed space to breathe, to think. I need to understand, Sarah. I need to know how long you've been carrying this secret, and why you felt you couldn't share it with me. We promised each other honesty, no matter how painful the truth might be. She hesitated, her gaze dropping as she considered her next words carefully. I've never really talked about it, she finally said, voice low and pained. Liam was someone from a time when I was reckless and searching for validation. It was a part of my life I thought I had outgrown, but I kept the necklace because it was a reminder of my mistakes. I was ashamed of who I was back then, and I didn't want that to taint what we had. I thought I could leave it behind, but it seems I've been running from it for too long. My heart pounded in my chest as I absorbed her confession. The realization that she had deliberately shielded me from her past, her vulnerabilities and mistakes, was a bitter pill to swallow. I wish you'd told me, I murmured, feeling a wave of sadness mixed with the sting of betrayal. I wish you'd trusted me enough to share that part of your life. I'm not perfect, Sarah. I have my own flaws, my own past. But we could have faced it together. Tears began to stream down her cheeks as she nodded in silent remorse. I know, Mark. I'm so sorry. I was foolish and scared, and I thought I was protecting both of us by keeping it hidden. I see now that it only pushed us apart. The room felt unbearably heavy as we sat there, the silence punctuated by the quiet sounds of our shared regret. I could feel the raw edges of my heart aching with the loss of innocence we'd once known. The necklace, once just an unassuming piece of jewelry, had become a symbol of all the secrets that had built a wall between us, a wall that now seemed insurmountable. I took a long, shuddering breath and tried to steady myself. I don't know if I can just forget this, I said, voice barely above a whisper. I need time to process all of this, to figure out if I can ever trust you again. I love you, Sarah, but I can't pretend that this doesn't hurt. It hurts deeply. She nodded, her expression broken yet determined. I understand, she said softly. Take all the time you need. I only want you to know that I'm ready to be honest from now on. I want us to heal, if you're willing to try. I never meant for this to destroy us. I sat back, feeling the magnitude of our conversation settle over us like a heavy shroud. I didn't have all the answers yet. The road ahead was clouded with uncertainty, and the trust one had once taken for granted lay in ruins around me. All I knew was that the revelation of that necklace, and the history it represented, had irrevocably altered our relationship. The pain of betrayal was raw, and the possibility of forgiveness felt distant, like a light flickering far off on a stormy night. For the rest of the evening, we talked in halting, tearful whispers, trying to navigate the labyrinth of emotions that now defined our every word. I asked her about the details of her past with Liam, about what had drawn her in, what had broken her heart, and how she had managed to carry those memories in secret. Each answer chipped away at the idealized image I'd held of our life together, replacing it with a tapestry of truth that was both beautiful and heartbreaking in its imperfection. In the quiet aftermath of our conversation, as the night deepened and the silence enveloped the room, I felt a numb clarity. I wasn't sure if we would ever be able to rebuild the trust that had been shattered by years of unspoken secrets, but I knew that I needed time to decide if forgiveness was possible. The necklace, with its engraved initials that weren't mine, had been a painful messenger, a reminder that the past, no matter how deeply buried, always has a way of surfacing. And now that it had, everything was changed. I told her that I needed to be alone for a while, to think, to heal, and to figure out what our future might hold. With a heavy heart, she agreed, tears still streaming down her face as she whispered one last apology before retreating to our bedroom. I stayed at the kitchen table for hours, the remnants of our conversation echoing in my mind. I replayed every word, every pause, trying desperately to piece together whether our love could survive this revelation. By the time I finally went to bed, my mind was a tangled mess of grief, anger, and a fragile glimmer of hope that maybe, someday, the wounds could begin to mend. I knew that the journey ahead would be long and arduous, filled with moments of intense pain and small steps toward forgiveness. But for now, I was left with the heavy truth, that the necklace was not just a piece of metal and stone, but a symbol of a secret past, a secret that had forever altered the course of our lives. That night, after she had retired to our bedroom in quiet defeat, I lay awake on the living room couch, the silence of our once shared home weighing heavily upon me. The necklace, its engraved initials still echoing in my mind, had become the emblem of a truth I could no longer ignore. I kept turning over the image of those letters in my head, trying to force a meaning that might allow me to believe that everything we'd built together was just a misunderstanding. But as the hours wore on and the darkness deepened, so did my certainty. Our love had been built on secrets, and that secret was irreparable. In the early hours before dawn, I resolved that I couldn't stay trapped in this living memory of betrayal. With a heavy heart and a mind reeling from the conversation, I began to pack a small bag. Every folded shirt and stowed pair of shoes felt like a quiet goodbye to a life that was slowly dissolving before my eyes. I wrote a note on a piece of paper, words that I wasn't sure I'd ever read aloud, and placed it on the kitchen table. I didn't know whether she would read it tomorrow, or if it would even matter at this point. All I knew was that I needed to leave, to seek solace and clarity somewhere beyond these four walls that had witnessed our unraveling. I stepped out into the cool, pre-dawn air, each breath a mix of sorrow and reluctant liberation. The city was still asleep, and I found unexpected comfort in its quiet anonymity. Every step away from our home felt like a step toward rediscovering a version of myself I'd long neglected. I couldn't shake the image of the necklace, the delicate chain, the engraved LM, and how it had shattered the facade of our life together. It was a physical reminder of all the things left unsaid, all the truths we had both buried beneath routine smiles and half-truths. I wandered aimlessly along empty sidewalks, my thoughts swirling with memories of better days. I recalled our early years, when love had been raw and unfiltered, when we shared our deepest hopes without fear of judgment. I remembered long drives with the radio turned up, spontaneous getaways, and quiet evenings wrapped in each other's arms. Now, those memories clashed with the reality of my discovery, the realization that, somewhere along the line, she had become someone I no longer recognized, or perhaps someone who had always harbored secrets too painful to confess. I checked into a modest hotel on the outskirts of town, a temporary refuge where I could begin to untangle my thoughts. In the solitude of my room, I found myself both furious and numb. I sat at the small desk by the window, the early light painting the walls in a soft glow, and opened my journal. With trembling fingers, I began to write down everything: the day's discovery, the confrontation, the raw pain of betrayal, and the crushing uncertainty about our future. Each word was a catharsis, a desperate attempt to reclaim some semblance of control in a life that had suddenly spun out of orbit. As I wrote, I started to question everything. Had I been so blinded by love that I ignored the signs? Was the necklace merely a remnant of a past she'd finally tried to forget, or did it represent something deeper, something that should have been shared between us long ago? My thoughts churned with regret and anger. I knew that I wasn't entirely without fault. In my desire to believe in the perfection of our life, I had perhaps overlooked subtle hints of her inner struggle. Yet, the discovery of LM on that small piece of jewelry left no room for doubt. It wasn't mine, it was a reminder of a part of her life that had been carefully hidden away, and now, that hidden life was an insurmountable barrier between us. The hours turned into a restless day of reflection and solitude. I walked along the quiet streets near the hotel, trying to piece together a future from the fragments of the past. I visited a nearby park, sitting on a cold bench beneath ancient trees whose leaves whispered in the wind, a sound that, for a moment, soothed the tumult inside me. I thought about what I truly wanted from life: honesty, trust, and a love that was as complete as it was vulnerable. I knew that if I were to continue in a relationship built on secrets and half-truths, I would eventually lose not only her but also myself. In a series of therapy sessions that followed, I began to confront the complex emotions swirling inside me. My counselor, a gentle soul with eyes full of understanding, helped me see that betrayal, however painful, could also be a turning point, a moment that forced us to confront our true selves. I learned to accept that the process of healing was not about forgetting the past but about integrating it into a broader narrative of who I was becoming. I explored my own vulnerabilities, my own capacity for forgiveness, and slowly, I started to see that letting go of the illusion was the first step toward reclaiming my identity. There were still nights when the pain would come rushing back, a flash of silver in the corner of my eye, a memory of her soft voice, a lingering scent that reminded me of happier times. In those moments, I would wrap myself in a blanket and allow the tears to fall, each one a testament to the depth of my loss. But gradually, as the weeks passed, I began to notice small shifts in my heart. The raw edge of betrayal softened, replaced by a quiet resilience. I started to rediscover parts of me that had lain dormant, old hobbies, new friendships, even the tentative thrill of pursuing dreams I'd once set aside. One crisp autumn afternoon, I decided to revisit a place we had once frequented, a little cafe tucked away on a side street where we had spent hours talking about everything and nothing. Sitting there with a warm cup of coffee and watching the world go by, I felt a stirring of hope. The memory of the necklace still haunted me, but I began to see it not only as a symbol of her hidden past but also as a turning point in my own journey. I realized that our love, though fractured, had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the necessity of embracing the full spectrum of one's truth. Eventually, I came to a decision, a painful but liberating choice that I knew was necessary for both of us. I called her one evening, my voice steadier than I felt. I told her that after much soul-searching, I couldn't continue living in a space shadowed by secrets and half-truths. I needed to rebuild my life from scratch, to find a love that was as honest as it was unconditional. My words, though measured, carried the finality of a closed chapter. There were long pauses, and I could almost hear her heart breaking on the other end of the line. We spoke quietly about the inevitable end of our shared story, a story that had once promised forever, but had faltered beneath the weight of unspoken regrets. The day after our conversation, I packed my belongings and left our home for the last time. Every item I carried, each book, every piece of clothing, felt like a silent farewell to a life that had been as beautiful as it was flawed. I drove away under a sky that was both somber and strangely hopeful, the open road stretching out before me like a blank canvas on which I would paint a new beginning. I felt a profound sadness for what we had lost, but also an undeniable relief, a sense of freedom that came from no longer having to hide behind the facade of a perfect life. Now, as I sit in my modest apartment in a new part of town, I reflect on that fateful day and the chain of events that followed. The memory of the necklace, with its engraved initials that were never meant for me, still stings like a fresh wound. Yet, it has also become a symbol of my journey, a journey of painful self-discovery, hard-won resilience, and the hope that I can forge a future built on truth rather than illusion. I've started to rebuild my life piece by piece. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones who value honesty and openness. I've immersed myself in creative pursuits, writing, painting, and even a bit of photography, that allow me to express the tumult of emotions that still swell within me. Each day is a step forward, each moment a small victory over the ghosts of a past that I can no longer afford to dwell upon. Sometimes, I still catch myself wondering about her, the woman I once loved so deeply, and I feel a pang of sorrow for the lost possibilities. I hope that she, too, finds the courage to confront her own truths and to live a life unburdened by secrets. In the end, the necklace was more than just an object, it was a silent witness to our shared history, a history that has now given way to new beginnings. It reminds me that even in our darkest moments, there is the potential for renewal, and that sometimes, the pain of truth is the only way to truly set ourselves free. As the sun sets each day and paints the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I am reminded that every ending holds the promise of a new beginning. I no longer see my past as a series of betrayals and broken promises, but as a mosaic of lessons that have shaped me into who I am today. With each sunrise, I embrace the uncertainty of the future, a future that, while still scarred by memories of a lost love, glows with the quiet brilliance of hope and the promise of a life lived authentically. And so, with a heart both heavy and hopeful, I continue to move forward, step by step, towards a tomorrow where truth reigns and love is no longer defined by the shadows of the past. The necklace will always remain a part of my story, a poignant reminder of the pain I endured and the strength I discovered in its aftermath. It is a symbol that even the smallest, most unexpected objects can change the course of our lives, urging us to confront the truth and ultimately, to find our way to a brighter, more honest future.